Good morning, and welcome to the first session on the third and the last day of the Belgrade Security Forum. I have to say, in my own name, it feels so good to be alive in the rooms and seeing the people's faces and having panelists on the stage. So welcome to everyone. Let me first thank Central European Initiative and General Secretary Antonione for partnering with Belgrade Security Forum and Belgrade Fund for Political Excellence. It means a lot to us, and we're glad to be here with you today. As we are entering the third year of the pandemic, I think one word that really came into a spotlight or a term is regional cooperation. We've been talking about it for years, if not decades, and the importance of it. But the pandemic, which unfortunately happened, gave it another meaning and really reminded us all of the importance of both intra-regional and region-to-region cooperation as it enables some things that, for instance, were not even possible before this crisis, before this happened. I would just mention green corridors. We know how important they are. We are trying to keep them alive even after the pandemic. But that was something that was hard to imagine before this occurred. In this region, we have a saying, "Nužda zakon menja." I don't know how I would translate it. Necessity changes the law. And really, these are some of the positive consequences. Also, I would mention the mass vaccination offered by Serbia to the citizens of the entire region. I think had a better effect than hundreds of words and agreements. So at least I will try to drive this discussion in a positive way, because I think we need a little bit more of positive views, discussions, and hopes for the post-COVID recovery. To discuss this, we will use just a little bit different angle than we usually do. We usually talk about intra-regional cooperation, meaning the Western Balkans or Balkans, as some prefer to say. But today we want to talk also about the wider aspect, about the region-to-region cooperation, Southeast Europe and Central Europe with the Balkans and all together. To discuss this important topic, I have a really good panel and interesting panel with people, with experts on regional cooperation, and also with experts who did not realize how important regional cooperation is just now, but true believers in it for a long time. So let me just briefly introduce the panelists. General Secretary of CEI, Roberto Antonione, appointed, I think, in January 2019. Professor Gordana Đurović, it's good to see you, Gordana. Too bad you're not with us, but I hope next time we'll be able to see you. Mrs. Đurović is the former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for European Integration in Montenegrin government since 2004-2010. When she was chief negotiator for SAA negotiation, as well as for the WTO and CEFTA negotiations. And I remember that time, and we all remember how energetic and successful Gordana Đurović was, and we were all looking at her work. Mr. Nemanja Starović, Minister of State for Security Policy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and... Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Nemanja. State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Serbia. Mr. Peter Serej, Minister of State for Security Policy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Peter Serej, did I pronounce it well? Starej, okay. Starej and Starović. So my first question goes to the State Secretary Starović. You have been appointed in February, if I'm correct. And I'm sure, since we've been in COVID at that time, that large part of your work was focused on response to COVID and overseeing efforts of the diplomatic service and bilateral and multilateral cooperation. with other countries in this regard. In what ways would you say that Serbia has benefited from intra-region cooperation, but also from wider regions of Southeast and Central Europe? And what, if anything, should and can be done in the next period?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I mean, the answer can be very long or just a little bit longer than expected. But first of all, let me apologize because I'm the one to blame because this panel was a little bit late, and it is actually a common thing that if there is a person to be late at the meeting, it is usually the one living nearby. So I'm really sorry about that. Also, I wish to express my gratitude to Belgrade Front for Political Excellence and other organizers of the Belgrade Security Forum for inviting me to speak at this panel. I think I'm one of the few persons that was actually present since the very beginning. Since the first BSF, I haven't missed a single one, and this is, of course, the first opportunity to speak as a panelist, and thank you very much for that. And the third thing, before I start answering your question, is to express great appreciation that the Republic of Serbia is having for all the activities of the Central European Initiative. We are very strongly committed to this organization, although some people have this tendency to diminish the value of the CEI. We don't share that view. We think it is a very important organization for at least two sets of reasons. First one is that we all, as members of the CEI, feel that we have that kind of local ownership, that the CEI is really committed to the basic needs that we are having. And maybe when we look at the sheer volume of the projects implemented through CEI, it cannot be compared to some other initiatives, but we think that the CEI is also, that is the second set of reasons, is very precisely targeting the needs that we are having. So in that way, exercising a kind of a smart power and smart influence, and we are really appreciative because of that. Now, back to your question. Finally, yes, it was a very challenging time, last 7 or 8 months, and we were all dealing with the issue of the pandemics in one way or another. Of course, you mentioned in your introduction that we tried to express a great amount of solidarity as the Republic of Serbia, providing more than almost 250,000 vaccines to our neighbors in the region at the very moment that when they didn't have any, actually, but also we opened our borders and invited all the citizens of the countries of the region to come to Serbia and get the free jabs. On top of that, we donated 100,000 doses to the Czech Republic and then started our campaign of donating vaccines to the countries of the African and Asian continent. But I think it is important not just because of the Republic of Serbia as such, but because we tried to show the different face of the region to the wider European audience, to send some positive messages finally from the Balkans, to show that we can express at times of crisis more solidarity, even more solidarity than our European counterparts from the European Union. So I think we contributed greatly to the changing of the narrative, which is of utmost importance when we speak about the future of the Balkans. As for your question, how do we assess the cooperation of our region with the wider regions in Europe? Well, I think the answer to that question derives from the very identity that we are having here, the Republic of Serbia. Our people have two dimensions to our identity, one being the belonging to the Balkans as such, but we also feel very strongly that we believe that we belong to the Central European type of mentality. Personally, as someone who is living in Novi Sad, working in Belgrade, I exercise that each and every day. And because of that starting point, our regional policy is shaped in that way, and we will speak further on about that, I'm sure, to present Serbia as the most important and most valuable link between the Balkans and Central Europe.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Secretary General Antonioni, next question for you. Once again, I have to say thank you for coming, and it's so great to have you here to talk about the role of international organizations and of regional cooperation in these difficult times. Support provided by regional organizations, among them CEI, remained of crucial importance throughout the pandemics. What, from your experience, is the best role for regional organizations? Is it the knowledge brokers, facilitators, advocates, or all of that and more?
All of them and more. Okay. Very simply, but first of all, let me express my appreciation for inviting me and for having the opportunity to take the floor in this high-level panel. And special thanks to the Minister for the warm words he expressed to our organization. Talking about the regional organization, I think we have to keep in mind that the regional organization was rising, I can say, 3 decades ago. So they are a sort of quite rather innovation in diplomacy. They are a young experience. The oldest and the largest organization, regional organization in Europe, is a Central European Initiative. Was founded 2 days ago, the fall of Berlin Wall, so in 1989. And I think that the regional organizations are closely linked to the globalization. Globalization reduced the distances, the time among and between people and countries. And so many challenges we are facing depends on it. And the regional organization try to give an answer to this kind of new challenges, how we can face, how we can win, how we can address these challenges. People need to have some answer, and in many different fields. It's in front of us the pandemic. It's one of the issue, but we can extend in every fields: economic, cultural, transport, science, infrastructure, and many others. But above all, I think that the policy dialogue is the key, the key driver of this process. And having the opportunity to intensify the policy dialogue is one of the missions of the regional organization, and it can allow us to be part of this process and to try to address it, to win these challenges. And this is exactly what the Central European tried to do. The short film explained many things we are doing, but I think the political value is the most important issue for the organization.
Thank you so much. Professor Đurović, you, in one of your previous, or many of your previous participations on panels talking about regional cooperation, you offered one of the best visions, or rather a roadmap, of how all the regional projects should come actually together. And related to that, I would like to ask you actually 2 questions. First, to tell us about your vision of this process and how it should develop in the future, also in the context of post-pandemic recovery. And then also, I cannot restrain myself but to ask you, what do you think about the Open Balkan initiative? Do you think that Montenegro will eventually join? Do you think that disagreements could be overcome? Because from what I hear, some members of the government are very supportive of the initiative, some are very against. Where do you think this would and should go?
Good day, everybody, from Montenegro, from my side. I like to be with you, unfortunately not this time, but do hope next. It is my pleasure to participate in this panel, and of course, thank you for your question, Maya. Regarding the future of all of this regional initiative, of course, I agree with all of them. They are supporting political dialogue and economic cooperation between our countries, not only in the region of Western Balkan, but also people-to-people communication and region-to-region cooperation. So our region is now part of different European initiatives, and what I like to see, for instance, in the motto of Slovenian presidency is that story about Europe as a whole, together and resilient, and I also like to believe that it will be continued with the French presidency with sense of belonging, what is our common future. In that sense, I think that as previously colleague mentioned, kind of ownership is evident already today, but unfortunately our region still has a lot of challenges regarding future scenarios or quality of that regional cooperation. I think today's activities shows that for the time being, economic integration is the most evident progress achieved, not only through the CEFTA, but also between countries and between different regions. So regional economic cooperation is growing, and we can see a lot of foreign companies, affiliates, also present in the region, and they start to treat our region as one investment environment. And it is, of course, promising, especially after all our economic indicators following COVID-19 crisis. So regarding general principle, I am always a strong supporter of regional initiative, and I think specifically Montenegro was always, since one conclusions from European Council in 2000 to today's, Montenegro was always mentioned as country with always positive approach towards all regional initiative. So do hope that my country will continue in that sense. And I think that we have a lot of numerous initiatives in the organization, but all of them have kind of reasons why they still existing together, all of them. And specifically, I like to mention this, what is related to economic cooperation. We have a very positive sign of growing of our economic integration. I will mention only one indicators, for instance, for 2020. As a region, for instance, Western Balkan, we have achieved the level of export toward EU market to the 70% of our total trade. And additionally, between us, we have additionally 15%, which is 85% of total export is in fact future common market. Hope so. On the side of the import, it is also very good result. We have with EU about 55%, but between us, we have additionally only 9%, which is about 2/3, let's say. And we have a growing trend with trade with China. It's about 12% today regarding import. But if we talk about CEFTA today, shortly, I think it is one good story. It's a story about trade liberalization and removing trade barriers between the countries in the whole our area. And what we have as a result, we have a CEFTA agreement, CEFTA 2006. We have liberalization of trade in industrial products, in agricultural products. We have achieved agreement on trade facilitation. We have achieved agreement on free services, free trade and services. And now we are negotiating even additional protocol about dispute settlement, what is also important, having in mind some specific situations between some parties. So it is one good agreement, and even CEFTA agree to move forward. So in 2017, we had this action plan for economic area. Sorry, 5 minutes already. Then we have this proposal for the common regional market. It is proposal committed and signed by all sides in our region. And between those two documents, we have a small Schengen, a mini Schengen, and now we have this open Balkan. So I think the best way should be just to keep this common regional market action plan. It is committed by all sides. It is monitored by RCC to have a regular report. It is in line with the international agreement signed according to all rules, CEFTA agreement, and it is linked with the economic investment plan of EU, which means that it was offered, take it or leave it. It is not easy to decide. So Open Balkan, in comparison with the common regional market from November last year, is in fact confirmation that not is all good regarding dynamic of common regional market action plan. So what we should do, we should really recognize where we have obstacles in common regional market action plan and somehow try to merge it to keep all six together, to have them on track and gradually to have all of this agreement. So Open Balkan Initiative is some kind of criticism that this, under Berlin process, common regional market action plan adopted from all sides is without enough dynamic in realization. So it is still a common challenge, how we can merge it and how we can, in fact, realize some of those all attractive things from agenda from Berlin process in November. So it is question for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Đurović. You did not respond to my question whether you think that Montenegro will join Open Balkan.
Okay. Just shortly, I think they are considering, because after meeting in Tirana, they have some additional proposals. So you are well informed. It is not single voice between line ministries. So we will follow together how they will decide.
Thank you. Mr. Staraj, to you now. Prior to your appointment at the Ministry of State for Security Policy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary, you served as Hungary's permanent representative at NATO. What is your view, because we don't speak that often, I think, about it, on security implications of interregional, but also of region-to-region consequences?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me greet all the participants in person and online. It's a great pleasure for me to be here in Belgrade at the present forum, and it's good to have Central European Initiative to present, because I think that's the organization which was actually the first Central European format during the system change and the fall of the Berlin Wall. So I remember when I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there was an oral and a written exam, and one of the important questions at the oral exam was about the Central European Initiative. So it's deep in our mind, because at that time this was the vehicle that we embarked upon, and it's really important. But when you ask about security and stability, I think the region needs a lot of bilateral cooperation and cooperation in the multilateral framework. And in that respect, both the EU and NATO have a very important role still. We know the history of the Western Balkans, and we know the history of Central Europe, which is really interconnected. And it's good to be aware of that history, because that teaches us for the future that we should work even closer together, because we need many types of cooperation frameworks to have that kind of stability that we have reached, and to build that stability for the future. As a former NATO ambassador, I can confirm that at NATO, we thought that we were very successful, actually, with regard to the Western Balkans, because 3 of the countries of the Western Balkans could be admitted to NATO. And I think that's a real achievement in terms of extending the zone of stability and security towards the southern part of Central Europe or of Europe. And whenever there is stability and peace in the Western Balkans, you can be sure that it has a very positive impact on the whole of Europe and the whole of the Euro-Atlantic area, I should say. But multilateral fora are not enough in that respect. We also need very strong bilateral cooperation of the states themselves. And if I have still a couple of seconds to bring here one example, that's Hungary and Serbia. Because to speak very frankly, traditionally in history, we had many difficulties, many conflicts here in this geographical area. And then about 10 years ago, the two countries realized that we need some kind of historic reconciliation, and that reconciliation took part. And since that, in the past 10 years, I must say that the bilateral relationship between the two countries has progressed unbelievably. And by now, we have a very strong strategic bilateral relationship. And Serbia has a very important role in the region. Its status has an impact on all the countries, and Serbia has put minority rights in the center of its policy, so the Hungarian minority in Vojvodina enjoys a very, very positive status. But this kind of reconciliation and very close cooperation also had a very important impact on our bilateral relations, on trade. It's skyrocketing now between the two countries. There are investments, and as a matter of fact, this all has a very positive impact on the stability of the region. So we need multilateral organizations, multilateral fora, and we need the bilateral relationships.
Thank you. Mr. Starovic, I have to ask you about the Open Balkan initiative as well. It has been taking on the features of political and foreign policy, not only economic initiative. What makes it so important for Serbia, and what do you think are the future prospects, and do you think that the similar question that I asked to Professor Đurović, do you think that it's possible to overcome the opposition or disagreements that we face today? How would you suggest to persuade or bring in the remaining participants?
I think not just that it is possible to overcome all the troubles that we are having, and in that regard, I think it is actually already happening, and I'm sure, I'm very positive about that, the Club of Three, Open Balkans being the Club of Three right now, will very, very soon become the Club of Four, and then after that, the Club of full 5 countries and 6 economies. Of course, it is not up to me to say who will join first and who will be the next, but I'm very positive about that it will happen very, very soon. But thank you for posting this question, because I really have a need to make some clarifications, and it is a common thing that our counterparts from the European Union member states ask us to clarify what are the differences between the project of the common regional market and the initiative, Open Balkans initiative, and whether these two initiatives are actually in some kind of competition. And our very clear answer to that is no, deriving from the very fact that all the 3 participating countries in the Open Balkans, the Republic of Serbia, the Republic of North Macedonia, and the Republic of Albania, are at the same time very much committed to the Berlin process and very much committed to the establishment of the common regional market. In practical terms, neither of our countries was making any kind of problems regarding the 4 agreements that we have been preparing for the July summit of the Berlin process. On the contrary, we were very much committed to it and made great efforts to reach the consensus on that issue. The way we perceive the relations between the common regional market and the Open Balkans initiative is like a system of concentric circles. You know, having a wider circle, including all 6 participants, but within that having an inner circle of states that wish to become kind of coalition of the willing and to make some further steps in the economic integration. And we see that principle as something that is actually functioning within the European Union. Among the 27 member states of the EU, you have some of them that are parts of the Eurozone and some that are not or still not members of the Eurozone. Same is the fact with the Schengen area. And we think that principle can be applied in our region of the Western Balkans. So I really believe that all the partners will have will acquire that kind of attitude, that it will be recognized in the European Union as such. We are very appreciative of the very strong support that we are receiving for the initiative of Open Balkans initiative from United States of America. We are very appreciative for the strong support that we are having for certain EU countries, especially from the countries of the region of the Central Europe and our friends and partners from the Visegrad Group countries. And we think it will highly contribute to the successful execution of this initiative. And when someone asks us, okay, so this is the concentric circles, but what is the difference? What makes the difference between the inner and the wider circle? Our answer is that the Open Balkans initiative is much more ambitious than the common regional market, because our target, our goal is not just to implement the 4 freedoms, but we also wish to have common labor market, and on top of all of that, we wish to totally abolish border crossings between our 3 countries and others who are, of course, all the time free to join. To abolish border crossings, and I think there is no need to further explain all the benefits of abolishing border crossings, just with the self-explaining fact that, you know, if the borders between countries were good for the economy, then the European Union would have them.
Yes, thank you. And you reminded me of Prime Minister Rama's words that Open Balkan is actually a fast track to the common regional market. And I like when they say that they're just taking their destiny or our destiny in our own hands and trying to push these initiatives and 4 freedoms forward in a faster way and in a way that they are taking the ownership of those initiatives. And I think we would all agree that that's important, especially in difficult times like this.
Let me also express my appreciation for everything Peter said. I wanted to use the example of Hungary and Serbia, but you took it from me. I can just sign on everything you said. And adding that our 2 nations, in the last 10 years, what we have achieved is that we have altered the course of the history. And that is something that happens very rarely. That's a great accomplishment.
Professor Đurović, I think we will all agree here that this region will emerge different from the pandemic. In a way, it already has changed. What are the principal socioeconomic, not political, but socioeconomic challenges that stand in the way of its progress, in your view?
Thank you. If you agree, I'd just like to comment shortly about Open Balkans still.
Please, please.
Okay. I tried to follow previous panels, and I think somehow we missed to discuss more deeper about those 2 initiatives. Honestly, if we like to remind ourselves about when all parties in the region joined to common regional market, when European Union said that they will support common regional market with the economic and investment plan. It was clear message for all that it is something what is strongly supported by European Union. So after that, no doubt, all governments or representatives, all of parties supported officially on Sofia summit. So if we can imagine that European Union will again repeat the same message that they officially strongly supported Open Balkan initiatives and that initiatives is somehow linked with European financial support, then it could be something what is, you know, much more concrete and serious for any country to dare to reject. So in that sense, I think that everything what we have in Open Balkan initiative, we have it in Common Regional Market Multi-Annual Action Plan. Talking about economic integration, they are on the same level of ambitions. We can discuss about different political approaches. In Common Regional Market, we have that CEFTA agreement as international agreement in the case of any dispute settlement. In Open Regional Initiative, we are again still on the level of the declaration. So definitely we need whole region to have real progress in that integration. What I like to see visa-free regime. I like to see open borders, green lane for all chapters of commodities. But there are some risks. I will also like to share with you my opinion about that. First risk is how we will control borders, because we talk about security and about fight against organized crime. So trafficking on all other risks. So if it is without any control, then we can have additional problem. Then how we can control commodities of third countries? They are under different trade regimes. And third is that if we haven't tariff between us, does it mean that we will work on common tariff towards third countries? And then it leads us to next step, what is towards custom union. It is a common institution. Somebody need to take care about external borders, and somebody need to take care about common tariff. So still we haven't it. So we need to go step by step carefully, to have all on board, and really to think about economic advantages, which means less unemployment, more mobility, supporting for common tourist tour, and of course, this sensitive issue about recognition of diplomas for opening of labor market for all. Honestly, I think that we will try to find problem for our deficit on labor market more from third countries than from our own region. We are all at the same problems even today. So it is regarding Open Balkan. I'm always a supporter of the regional initiatives, but we need to carefully, economically analyze what is sensitive in that process and how we can solve it. And of course, we need to have closely EU on that on that path together with us. Somehow, still we need them as a friendly facilitator in all our dialogues, especially when they still have very evident spillover, frequently negative between countries, but we like to think about economic benefits for all. Regarding COVID and socioeconomic programs, they are similar almost in each country or economy in our region. And what is good that now we have in 2021 kind of signals of recovery. And it is of course promising that we in midterm, we can think about indicators from 2019 and about finding new ways for stronger economic integration.
Thank you, and thank you for very really important points about the Open Balkan. I really appreciate that you wanted to share them with us. Mr. Antonioni, back to you. Recently, and this is the quote that you used that I would like to share here. You said, one way to better respond to this multitude of crises is through reinvigorated and infected multilateralism. In particular, CEI has been working together with World Health Organization on a number of initiatives. What is your view? How has the region really come together when it came to facing the pandemic, and what should and could have been done better, if anything?
It's not easy for me to judge the situation here and to say if...
You can talk also about Central Europe and Southeast Europe.
Of course. Strengthening the multilateralism, I think, is not only the best way, but the only way in which we can go if we want to face and win the challenges and the threats of our times. In this regard, I think if the regional organizations are able to create partnership with great international organizations, could be very important. And CI have done this process. We established a relationship with WHO Europe, and we have created a task force, WHO CI for COVID-19 pandemic. The WHO provided experts technical support, And all our member states participate in this process with high-level health officials and experts, and we have been able to have a webinar and video conference with them from July to December of 2020. It's very important. We are proud of this because they are able to share information, to share the experiences, best practices, and obviously it was not, unfortunately, enough to face the pandemic situation, but it was very important. It's a very important example that the regional cooperation could give for explain how we can work in concrete in this field. And from this good experience, the regional director for Europe of WHO, Hans Kluge, and myself decided to create a new experience for the future, try to intensify our cooperation in this field. And we think it's a very important example also for other possibility and other initiatives in other fields. We can do better, we have to do better, but this is a road, this is a map. This is what we have to do, try to face this situation in general, all the situation altogether. If we want to have positive results, we have to understand that we have to work together. This is the message.
Thank you. Mr. Starej, a similar question to you, but from your background, the government background, what do you see as the main role of governments, national governments, in establishing but also maintaining the dynamics and level of regional cooperation?
Well, of course, most of it depends on the governments. It's clear because it's organizations and governments working together, but also organizations are made up of governments. So in that respect, we have some good experience in the Visegrad 4 cooperation. We have some very good experience in the CEI and other formats. But when you talked about, the other speakers talked about the importance of sub-regional cooperations and, for example, the Open Balkans initiative, we think that anything that is contributing by the states who cooperate to deeper relationships, to more free trade, to better situation with regard to the movement of labor and opening up the borders, that is all welcome. We support all of these. But one thing we cannot forget in the meantime, that whatever happens at the regional, sub-regional level, none of these can substitute the importance of the EU enlargement process, because without a real progress in the enlargement process, the countries of the region are let down. And we, from a Hungarian point of view, as the Hungarian government, we are not satisfied with the pace of this. We speak about it vocally and very loudly, actually, because we think that if there is no real perspective for the countries of the region to move forward, and we see that they are delivering in many aspects, including Serbia and including the others, if there is no progress in that respect, that will not bring more stability to the region, and that will have a harmful effect on us too. So that's why we are a very loud advocate of the enlargement process of the EU, which can be an overarching umbrella over all these national and international regional initiatives. And the states, of course, have a huge responsibility in that, because the decision-making is made up by the states. So at the end of the day, whatever the enthusiasm of the Commissioner for Neighborhood Policy and Enlargement is, Mr. Várhelyi, he's really committed, but he's, at the end of the day, naturally in the hands of the present EU members, because it's a decision made based on consensus. And that's why we think that member states have this kind of huge responsibility, and sometimes we have the impression that at least some of the member states are more focusing on the tactical short-term aspects of enlargement and not looking at the big picture, the strategic picture, which is equally important, because in the long run, that will decide how this region can be stabilized in an unreturnable way. And that's why we are the advocates of making progress in that respect. So states have a decisive role.
Thank you again for really important statements. I'm sure we all agree with the role, your statement on the role of the governments, and also thank you for mentioning some governments which probably are not looking at a big picture and trying to see strategically what it means for this region to become member of the whole and free Europe. Mr. Starovic, similar question to you. As a representative of the largest economy in the Balkans, and we are now focusing to regional economic cooperation, how do you see the role of national, in this case Serbian government, in stimulating inclusive regional cooperation?
Well, first of all, I wish to build on something Peter said about the fact that we have the best supporters and best advocates of the enlargement of the EU actually in the region of Central Europe. And I think it is a very logical thing. There is more interest, more appreciation for the need of the enlargement to the Western Balkans in the neighboring countries or countries that are nearby. And there is a different kind of outlook than in certain other EU member states. And coming back to what I mentioned at the very beginning in my first time I had the opportunity to speak, is that we are deeply rooted both in the Balkans and in the Central Europe. And that is why we also feel that we are part of the wider Central European region. And our friends and partners from Budapest, but also from other Central European states, understand that. They know that, for example, it is not feasible to speak about north to south connections, which are of utmost importance for Central Europe, if not speaking about Serbia as a part of that solution. When we speak about the enlargement process, enlargement of the European Union, it is, again, the countries of the Visegrad Four that are giving us a very, very strong and very vocal support. And even on top of that, we have heard on many occasions voices from a high political level from Visegrad Group countries speaking about the need for some asymmetric solutions. If, for example, the full membership in the European Union is not so close, if we cannot count on that in the next couple of years, why not speak about incorporating Serbia in the Schengen area? That is something that we have heard from Budapest, from Prague, even from Warsaw. And I know it may be a far-fetched, but the very fact that we can hear such voices are very important for us, and we appreciate that because our neighboring friendly countries from the Central European region understand how important the Western Balkans as such is, not just in political and economic, but also in security terms for the European continent and for the European Union. But back to your question, of course, about the policies that we are pursuing in the context of the regional economic integrations. Well, I do not want to waste our time because we have spoken already about the Open Balkans initiative, and I can agree on that, of course, that, when we speak about the common regional market and the Open Balkans, it is actually overlapping, but it is only normal because we have same institutions with each of the governments. Actually, we have the same people that are negotiating the programs that are envisaged through these initiatives. And what is the most important thing, because we still have some of the potential partners who are hesitating a little bit, it is always very important to explain and to reach an understanding of the very fact that the regional economic cooperation is not a zero-sum game. It is not something where one side has to lose something in order for the other side to gain that very thing. It is actually not the case. And all the studies that we have conducted, and not just us, but also people from the most important international financial institutions, are saying that there is a much of added value in regional economic cooperation, much of added value to be shared among the participants. Some of the participants may get more, the others may get less, but it is most important to reach to an understanding that nobody would be at a loss in enhancing regional economic cooperation. Now, we can speak about some studies saying that we can have 3.5 billion euros each year of added value in the region of the Western Balkans if we are to abolish the barriers that we are having at the time. We can speak about this very famous 26 million working hours that our truck drivers are losing, you know, wasting on the border crossings. There are many indicators that are really proving the fact that the regional economic integration is not and cannot be a zero-sum game, and that is the message I really wish to emphasize. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I'm so sorry that our time seems to be running out, but I would like to offer one more time an opportunity to Professor Đurović, from your huge experience, both practical and academic, in the topics that we are discussing today, and also, although you are not a member of the government now, would you like to comment on the role of national governments? And also, I would like to ask you a little bit about what do you think the main goals of what do you think that the private sector, that companies need at this point? Do you agree? Do you encourage their pushing for removing barriers, removing all the procedures that really prevent, we heard some of the numbers, the normal trade of both people and capital and goods? How do you see their role, and what's really preventing it at this point, in your view?
I prefer to comment this view from the business. I think it is maybe partly missing. So we just finished one research. It was for the whole region about how to remove existence of the trade barriers, non-tariff measures, non-tariff barriers. And I was pleasantly surprised that, for instance, in direct interviews with the exporters and importers, a lot of barriers are already removed. And it is kind of positive ongoing process of dialogue about removing barriers. So waiting time on our borders are slightly reduced. Then there are additional infrastructure investment in frequent passes. Then there are less requests for additional licenses, for a longer procedure, for laboratory testing. And our customs are somehow in a network through this SEED Plus project. Now we are working on including also inspectorates in this information system, which will also allow us faster trade. Trade is almost fully liberalized. So if we talk about trade in goods, there are a lot of progress, and I think business could be enough satisfied with progress, and they have this network of Chamber of Commerce, and they are very active in that. Now, what is in fact the most important part? Services and labor market. So it is area where things are a little sensitive, and it can't go fast as with trade. In fact, trade was not so fast. But now we are in the area of services, labor market, and the overall business environment. And we can go according to our capacities. It is not pushing it politically more than it is possible to accept by all custom territories in our region. So I also like to add that what is EU original product, it is a negotiation towards a win-win solution. So everybody can feel that they are also benefited from that dialogue. So they are part of that. They had part of this regional ownership. And I am for transparent dialogue. I am for close cooperation with EU. And I think that it is the only formula how we can agree about progress. And just last sentence regarding enlargement, I also like to thank you for this nice wording about importance of enlargement as a geopolitical issue about peace, prosperity, stability, and values within the Europe. So we are internal region. We can contribute it only with the 5% of territory and 4% of population of EU today, with less than 1% of current GDP, but we are geopolitically important. We are somehow in, and I think problem is with timing. We are all the time talking about progress, about process, and some member states always think about we are in front of the door and it will be tomorrow. It will not be tomorrow, but we can discuss when, of course, according to criteria. So just please keep the door open and send us that message of trust and solidarity that we are together in this joining the European Union.
So much. This was really a nice closing that you delivered. I don't have to say anything other than to thank really to you and to our panelists here in the room. I think we can actually even agree that even with some disagreements about specific aspects of initiatives of regional cooperation, we all agree that this region is stronger together, and stronger together, hopefully, in the EU in the foreseeable future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.